Welcome to the dynamic Mesh Occluder plugin for Unreal Engine. This plugin gives you a fast and flexible way to remove hidden body geometry based on your character's clothing while also giving you full manual control when needed. No more body mesh clipping through clothes and no more wasting performance rendering geometry that is never visible. In this video, I will show you how to automatically detect occlusion, refine it using manual painting, then saving the result as a separate skeletal mesh with seamlessly generated LODs, and generating a mapping data asset for swapping the occluded meshes at runtime. Alright, so let's get started. So this is a code plugin. Once you install it from the Epic Games launcher, you will see it enabled in your plugin directories over here. To get started, first select the source skeletal mesh, right click on it and choose create body occlusion mapping data. This will open the Mesh Occlusion editor asset. You will also notice that a new asset is created in the content browser, which means you can save it and come back to it later. The first step here is to add a clothing mesh to the array. So I will add this t-shirt. So here you have the detect occlusion button. Clicking this will automatically remove the occluded body surface beneath the clothing. To visualize the result more clearly, enable hide clothing. This hides the clothing mesh and allows you to see exactly which parts of the body have been removed. You can tweak the occlusion settings here to improve the accuracy and get closer to your desired result. However, some areas will still need manual cleanup. For that, I'm going to click on this paint occlusion button. This enables the manual painting. The white area is the occluded part. You can paint on top of it using left click. And holding shift and clicking is going to clear the occluded area, as you can see over here. So I'm going to clear some of the edges as well, so they are not visible from the boundary of the cloth mesh. Once done, just click on exit paint and you can see the result right away. Now let's add another clothing mesh. You will notice that this clears the previously auto-generated occlusion, but it still retains any areas that were manually painted. So I will run detect occlusion again. This time it recalculates everything while preserving the manual edits we made earlier. Because we had previously removed some occlusion manually, you can see a small visible segment here. To fix that, I will simply use the paint occlusion tool again and clean it up. Once I'm satisfied with the result, the final step is to save the occluded mesh. First, ensure that you have a valid output path selected here. Then assign a proper name for the mesh. You can also see the mapping asset name. This will either create a new mapping data asset or reuse an existing one if it is already present in the same output location. Now I will click on this button, Save Occluded Mesh. Alright, the mesh along with the mapping asset is now saved. The occluded mesh looks perfect and all the LODs are auto-generated and they work seamlessly. Now let's look at another example. This time I am using a female metahuman body and I have added a top that has an opening around the leg area. When I click detect occlusion, you can see that it also removes the body geometry that is actually visible through that opening. We can fix it very easily. Just switch to paint occlusion mode and manually restore or clean up the affected area. I am going to save this mesh as well. Now let's take a look at the mapping data asset. This asset essentially links the clothing mesh with its corresponding occluded body mesh. When you are dynamically swapping clothing meshes, you can use this data asset to quickly find and assign the correct matching body mesh. Inside the Mesh Occlusion editor, you can also paint and remove mesh areas without relying on any clothing assets. So let's remove the clothing mesh first. Now since there is no clothing assigned, you do not need to use detect occlusion. Instead, you can directly use the paint occlusion tool and manually paint the exact areas you want to remove. This gives you full control to customize the mesh however you like. Once you're done, you can save this as a separate occluded mesh. Since this version is not linked to any clothing asset, it will not be added to the mapping data asset. For the painting workflow, along with the regular brush tool, I have also added a couple of additional ways to paint the affected regions more efficiently. First, the select tool. This allows you to directly select specific sections of the mesh along a rectangular region. Next, the lasso select tool. This gives you a more flexible way to define custom areas. You can draw a freeform shape around any part of the mesh and everything inside that selection gets affected. So when you have multiple clothing options in your game, you can use the same asset editor to handle all of them. Simply add different clothing meshes to the array, adjust the occlusion results and refine the occluded regions until you're satisfied. Each of these meshes will populate your mapping dataset for the corresponding clothing, whether you're working with single or multiple outfit combinations. This approach gives you two major advantages. First, it improves performance by avoiding the need to render the full body mesh underneath the clothing. Second, it completely eliminates those common issues where the body mesh clips through the clothes. Like here you can see in my chaos cloth editor how the original skeletal mesh clipping through the clothing mesh. So I will replace it with the occluded mesh, and this immediately removes your clipping issue because obviously there is no geometry rendered behind the clothes. You can also check a particular animation sequence directly inside your mesh occlusion editor so that if there are any clipping issues you can fix them right away. Alright, so that's it for the quick demonstration of my dynamic mesh occluder plugin. You can get this plugin from the Fab Marketplace. The link is given in the description. So thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video.